Hi guys, welcome back or welcome in. I'm Jo and this is your daily card pull. And actually today, two cards popped out and I I was actually only going to choose one to do a deep dive into, and that was going to be the King of Wands in the reverse. But as I was, doing journaling and kind of thinking about this card and its message, the Seven of Pentacles, which had popped out next to it, really felt quite aligned with the message coming through today. And so let me start with the King of Wands. I'll touch on the Seven of Pentacles connection later. But this is kind of like, feeling like you've got some big ideas and that you're meant to do something big. Yet every time you come close to expressing yourself, something inside of you maybe pulls you back. And this is maybe like a second guessing of this intuition, maybe seeking approval before making a decisive decision to act. This is maybe inner doubt of your own power. And this energy can turn into kind of controlling, defensive, disconnected energy. Disconnection from your own power. And I feel like the King of Wands reversed today isn't questioning your power. It's asking you one question. Who convinced you it wasn't safe to have it? Because the King of Wands doesn't lose power. He simply forgets that it belongs to him. That inside there is this reservoir of this fire, this passion. And in the tarot, the Suit of Wands represents our fire. It governs our life force, our creativity, our sexuality, our confidence, our inspiration, and our ability to kind of take up space in the world. And the upright king has mastered this fire. He doesn't dominate people, he inspires them. He doesn't need external attention. But because his authenticity naturally is there, because he's acting from his internal reservoir, he naturally draws people towards him. And he's deeply connected to his own heart. And because of that, he gives others permission to connect with theirs. But when the king appears in the reverse, sorry, my washing machine is always on during readings. I'm actually just going to quickly turn it off. I don't know why I do that. So, where was I? Okay, when the king appears reversed, the fire doesn't disappear. It simply is turned inwards. And so what this does, instead of kind of creating, it becomes consuming. And instead of illuminating, it becomes criticizing. Instead of trusting, it can become really, really controlling. And, the kings in the tarot aren't simply these external people, because it can represent an external kind of masculine father figure that maybe is inspiring to us, but they more importantly represent the mature aspects of our own psyche. So the King of Wands embodies our healthy upright. He embodies our healthy masculine energy, the parts of us that protect our vision. They set boundaries, they act with integrity. It's an energy that moves courageously despite fear, creates instead of reacts. And when this card appears reversed, it's often pointing towards our own inner masculine authority and energy that becomes repressed or abandoned. And for many people, this connects deeply with the father archetype. And Zazie, come here. Come. And it's not, come here. It's not necessarily our biological father, but more the internal protector within us. It's that protector that says, I've got you. You don't have to betray yourself to belong. Your truth deserves protection. And when this archetype is underdeveloped, we stop protecting ourselves. We override our intuition. We abandon our own boundaries. We become available to everyone except ourselves. And perhaps no one taught you how to protect yourself emotionally. And so there's no blame here. Maybe you never learned that your needs mattered. Perhaps you were told that being confident was selfish or garish. That shining brightly made other people feel uncomfortable. Maybe expressing your passions was sometimes or somehow too much. I have a personal story like this that is just, it's so, yeah. I mean, I've got so many different, very big traumas, as I'm sure we all do. But one tiny moment in a class, in maybe grade 1 or grade 2, just stands out to me. And this is, I know, this teacher who dimmed my light for wanting to do 2 projects instead of 1 and embarrassed me in front of the whole class. It's such a prominent memory of mine, and it's so hard to get over that and just know she was so silly and so stupid, and I didn't have anyone to go to kind of reprimand her and to protect me in that moment. So instead of becoming my own protector, I became my own abandoner. And, every time you ignore your intuition, every time you stay silent, every time you betray your truth to keep someone else comfortable, the inner king quietly steps away. And, nature doesn't do well with vacuums. So when your inner authentic king disappears, the ego builds a replacement. The false king looks like confidence, but underneath, he is terrified. He becomes obsessed with control. He compares himself to everyone. He needs external recognition and validation. He needs success to prove his worth. He needs admiration because he cannot yet admire himself. And he becomes, he can appear very arrogant, but he is extremely judgmental, impatient, defensive, maybe even overly ambitious. And these are all signs of someone who is trying to project power, but they are not actually truly powerful. They're desperately trying to cover up the fear that they aren't powerful. He becomes kind of like the ultimate gaslighter, self-gaslighter. So the king begins to question everything. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I should ask someone else, maybe they know better. And slowly your intuition becomes quieter than everyone else's opinion. So instead of consulting your heart, you consult, social media, chat GPT, friends, family, experts, anyone except yourself. And eventually you forget something incredibly important, that this wisdom you've been searching for has been living inside of you the whole time. And, you know, we have to ask ourselves, where did this begin? Because this card often reaches back into childhood. And we need to ask ourselves, who taught us that our fire was dangerous? Our fire, our passion, our sexuality, our creativity. For me, that teacher, you know? And like, who made you feel too loud, too expressive, too emotional, too sexy, too creative? You know, simply too much, maybe. Children do not naturally suppress themselves. You know, they suppress themselves because they believe it's necessary to receive love. Somewhere along the way, your nervous system learned that authenticity wasn't safe. So your inner king quietly laid down his crown. And many people carrying this energy unconsciously believe that they only have two options. So the first option is to stay small, stay hidden, and be safe. And the other option is to fully express myself and risk the rejection that we've learned will come. So they choose neither often. They stay small, not because they lack brilliance, but because they mistake visibility for danger. Their gifts stay locked away. Their creativity becomes frustration. Their passion becomes resentment. Leadership becomes self-doubt. And the fire doesn't disappear. It simply burns the person holding it. And this amazing creative force becomes destructive. And then what I found really, really interesting is that the Seven of Pentacles in reverse also came out. And sometimes like the card besides that king can explain exactly why this fire becomes blocked. And the Seven of Pentacles is the gardener. Let's look at him upright. He's this patient gardener. The part of us that plants seeds, waters them patiently, and trust that growth happens beneath the surface long before we can see it. But when this card appears reversed, the gardener begins to lose faith. He looks at the soil and thinks, I've worked so hard. Why isn't anything happening? Instead of trusting that the natural rhythms of growth happen before we can actually see them. And he begins believing that the harvest will never come. And when we stop believing our efforts matter, something inside of us like kind of quietly gives up. This is often where the King of Wands reversed is born. Not because he lacks passion, but because he's emotionally exhausted from pouring his heart into life while secretly believing that nothing will ever be enough. So he stops creating from joy. He begins measuring his worth by his outcomes, by productivity, by recognition, by how quickly life rewards him. And the thing is, fire doesn't thrive under pressure. It thrives when it's given oxygen. The Seven of Pentacles reversed asks us A deeply uncomfortable question. Have you confused slow growth with failure? Nature has never rushed a tree. A seed isn't failing simply because you can't yet see what's happening beneath the surface. Its roots may be growing far deeper than your eye can perceive. And as as above, so below. So as deep as the roots can grow, that's how big and tall the tree can be. And sometimes the greatest acts of courage isn't pushing harder. It's trusting that your inner garden is still alive, even when nothing seems to be blooming or sprouting. And together, these two cards tell a profound story. So the King of Wands reversed is saying, I've stopped trusting myself. And the Seven of Pentacles in reverse is saying, I've stopped trusting the process. One wound is wounding your identity, and the other wound is wounding your faith. And when both are wounded, we begin looking outside of ourselves for certainty. We can only cultivate, for the certainty that we can only cultivate within us. So, how do we turn this king upright again? You know, first, we have to recognize that the beliefs protecting us were created by a younger version of ourselves. They were survival strategies, not external truths. Even with the story of my teacher, I so obviously know what a bad teacher she was, that she probably was acting. My logical adult mind knows that. But the knot that I tied when I was that little girl, the conditioning, that neural pathway is still quite strong. And secondly, we have to become our own protector. Your inner king doesn't ask the world for permission. He creates boundaries that allow his fire to exist safely. He understands that vulnerability without boundaries leads to depletion. But vulnerability with boundaries creates authentic connection. And thirdly, stop waiting until you feel fearless. Confidence doesn't arrive before action. It grows because of action. Share the artwork, put the YouTube video out, speak your truth, even when it's going to make someone else uncomfortable. Set your boundaries. Say no. No is a full sentence. No is a spell. Say yes. Yes is also a spell. Take one courageous step in the direction of your dreams, even if it's the smallest dream. Every small act teaches your nervous system something new. I can be seen and still be safe. And the King of Wands reversed isn't telling you that you're powerless. He's reminding you that you've been handing your power away. Your fire was and is never extinguished. It's simply just waiting for you to trust it again. And remember, greatness isn't standing on a stage. Greatness is living in complete alignment with your authentic truth. Like whether anyone is watching or not. You know, sometimes I like to believe that maybe my future self is in the room with me watching, or my past self cheering me on. And so I'd love for you to reflect on this. Where did you first learn that expressing your authentic fire wasn't safe? Maybe there were a few instances. Like, have you ever mistaken slow growth for failure? And if your inner king knew he could never be diminished by another person's opinion, what is the first gift that he would begin releasing into the world today. So share your reflections in the comments. I'd love to know. And if this reading resonated, please don't forget to like, subscribe, join me for the next reading. I really, really appreciate you being here. Until then, have a wonderful day.